people have to take responsibility for managing their own health. It's your health, you have to take responsibility for it. And the doctors will deal with you when you are sick, but it's your responsibility not to get sick. And that is really what the message is of patient power. I suppose we're also part of a system that when someone has a heart attack, they did something wrong. They did something wrong. Bit overweight, bit of pressure, in your 50s, you've done something wrong, because it wouldn't happen to me. I'm feeling great. And I suppose that's part of the change that we have to understand. And it's a disease. It grows. So when that event happens, it's the progression of that disease over many years. We're part of the system that accepts your numbers up. It happened. You had a heart attack. 60-year-old is murdered. 60-year-old dies in a car crash. Investigation. Dies of a heart attack.
Very sad.
Very sad. Buried, dead, buried, move on. DBM. That's the way it is. If we look at road deaths, this year, last year, 161 people were killed on the roads. And I'm not saying in any way it's very tragic, every one of those. But look at the mindset change there has been on it. You wear a seatbelt. We wouldn't let a car on the road without an airbag. We have speed limits making sure that you're not breaking the law. We know the numbers because we get them every day. And we ensure that cars are all roadworthy. And yet for a test of €400 today to see what your probability or likelihood of dying over the next 10 years ago over, which you only have to take once, again going back to the point that it is a disease. The current system is that we apply a percentage basis to a population. So it would be like going in and being told, listen guys, there's 100 cars there, each of you take your car, drive it off, 5 are going to crash, and 2 are going to be involved in fatal accidents. But you 100 drive off, because that's better the statistics than it was 3 years ago. I think any of us would look and say, that's not good enough. I want to know my car, whether it's going to crash or not. And I suppose that's where the calcification test does. It brings that personalisation to a population. The current system is to treat heart disease as an event rather than a disease, and put the resources into fighting the fires. And let's be clear, there are reasons for that. We have cardiologists who work really hard on a daily basis, saving lives. That's what their job is. They're committed to what they're doing. So these are individuals who are totally committed to what they're doing. But that's one part of it. The other part of it is, and I don't mean to be provocative here, I'm just trying to put it in easy people's terms, is that their training is mechanics in a garage. They fix things. That's what they trained. That's what they've done all their lives. They want the best workshops, the best tools. Unfortunately, in the meantime, 36% of the cars never get to the garage. Who represents them? On the traditional mechanism, people are graded into low risk, middle risk, and high risk. And that's where you're classified. And low risk people are, no family history, no blood pressure, no cholesterol, 25% of the population. 50% of people fall within the kind of middle risk, maybe a bit overweight, maybe a little bit of cholesterol, whatever the factors. Getting older gets us into that category. And 25% are high risk people. And clearly the thing about it is that low risk people, based on all the studies, are actually okay I can't say all, but are okay. The 25% that are at the high risk are actually being treated very aggressively. The problem is that the 50% of people who are in the middle risk. So when they apply the calcification test to the middle risk group, over half the people move either into low risk or into high risk. You would hope that the test that's applied would identify those people who are at most risk. That's what you would expect a test to do. Yet most people who have a heart attack are in that middle risk. And in any other way of life, we come along and say, well, we need to change that risk assessment basis because the current system isn't working. We're using a test that's 40 years old. It's nearly the time like black and white TV. You look how the world has moved on, and we're still using a test from Framingham that was developed that long time ago. No doctor would look at you and me and say, he's worse cholesterol than me, nowhere near as fit, not very good at his diet. He's no calcification. No. I have a score of 906. There would be no other system in the world where you can define middle risk with that degree of variation. Middle risk people are a group who don't think they're at as much risk as they are. Yeah. It is very difficult to understand why, when most heart attacks happen in the middle risk, that we don't treat middle risk people as high risk until we have the calcification test rolled out in the country. And there's got to be some form of responsibility somewhere for both the patient and for the doctor to go and say, why if someone who's had a heart attack, or why is somebody who's died suddenly not had the safety belt that reduces their risk by 30%? Is that not a reasonable question to ask? But let's remember, institutions protect themselves. Whether it be banks, the church, the medical profession. Please, the individual is not the centre stage. This is the point that you as an individual have to take responsibility for your health. There has been a lot of resistance to it, okay? And that is a fact. The thing I see about it is that, you know, they are no different than any interest group. And an interest group rightly wants to look after the resources going into where they are involved in, because they see how many lives they're saving on a daily basis. So there's nothing wrong with it. The fact is, the regulation though of it is that there's nobody looking at the bigger picture. They can't both be judge and jury. There's nobody looking at this in the overall context of where resources go into or not. It does mean putting more resources into dealing with people who have a disease at a much earlier stage rather than waiting for the event to happen. I think one of the most interesting parts for me has been the cardiologists who were tired dealing with it as an event. It's a disease. They cannot prove their strategies, but their patients don't have heart attacks. And the reaction from the current medical system to them, it's totally negative. The system works in a certain way. Institutions don't change. The change has to come from individuals taking the responsibility to manage their own health. Surely the fact that if there's a test there that is available, that you can take, that can impact so many people's life expectancy, that should be available to every individual. All men have the test at 45, all women have the test at 55. We need a mindset change to understand it is a disease. That is most critical. The customer defines the production system. The change is going to be is that people are going to take responsibility for their health, and that is going to change the system that's in place. The solutions are pretty simple. The A to F. We've seen Track the Plaque, which is going to be available on the website for everybody for a period of time free of charge, which goes and gives people education and solutions. And what was very interesting with the recent guidelines from the US was that they treat the disease first now and the pain second. So that was a big move. And again, for middle risk people, we need to treat them as high risk until they have the calcification test. The system doesn't put those people who die at the center of the action plan. Our change isn't stemming from the belief that those people who died, that it was avoidable, and we've got to represent them in terms of change. That they drive our strategies going forward. That they drive where we put our resources medically wise. Because they're dead. They aren't represented. And in any other way of life, they would be right at the heart of the change required. Imagine in the morning there was a new disease that killed 10 people, 3/4 of them over 65. 10 people died tomorrow of a new disease. And it happened the following day. We would be up in arms. Imagine if 10 cars went on the roads and were involved in car crashes because there was a problem. We would be up in arms. And yet, based on international studies, 10 people a day in Ireland wake up and die from plaque. And if it was any other disease, we'd be coming and saying, what are the best practices today to stop this happening tomorrow? It's real life people are dying, and we've got to take real life action. We know in 10 years it's going to be different. We know our kids are going to have communication channels to give out the message. And they're going to look back and say, how did you allow this happen? But most importantly, it is to remember those people who have died who did not have that opportunity. So that's the driving force. Can't bring them back, can't change them. But what has happened in the past cannot continue in the future.